Hello for the 21st week in the year, using the first reading from Isaiah 66 and the Gospel Luke 13:22 to 30. This weekend we wrap up the Olympics, and I think it has something to do with the Gospel reading. I call this Jesus, the great Olympic coach. So this weekend we wrap it up, and only a few will get the medals, the golds and the silver and the bronze. And all of those have been training for years and years, and a few will even be disqualified, but only a few get the medals, and very, very few are disqualified. Well, this crazy, wild idea, Jesus, the great Olympian coach. Well, Jesus is not from Mount Olympus, that chain of mountains, or the height goes to 9,510 feet. Jesus is not from there, and that's the abode of the Greek gods. And Jesus is not Zeus, or his father is not Zeus. That was the father of the Greek gods. But Jesus was sent by God, his Father, which I like today to say the great Olympic coach. Well, people of all countries participate in the Olympics, and of all languages, and they have experienced blood, sweat, and tears for the last many years, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 60 years, in preparation. And with Jesus, this coach, the great Olympic coach, all who participate are winners. All who take part in the Olympics, all those athletes from all over the world, they are winners. Well, let's look at the gospel. Someone, let's just say an Olympian or an athlete, asked Jesus Christ, will only a few be saved? Or only a few win the medals? And Jesus says this. Jesus says this, sort of strive to do your best. Many have already tried, but do not make it. Only a few will get the medals. What Jesus said in the gospel is, strive to enter through the narrow gate. For many, I tell you, will attempt to enter but will not be strong enough. With Jesus and the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, really in our church doctrine, all are saved. Look at that first sentence in Isaiah 66. It says, thus says the Lord, I know their works and their thoughts, and I to come together nations of every language, and they shall come and see my glory. So Jesus, in our doctrine of the incarnation, has become a man. And Jesus, sent by the Father, has come and has saved all. All creation becomes winners. All those who participate in creation become winners. And they get the medals. And all creation is saved. Every person is saved. But there's a problem. Some have the possibility of disqualifying themselves and through their own free will. And that's the only way that you cannot not be saved. And so the question has come up since the time of the apostles. Today, how many are saved? All? Some? Few? Most? 10%? 25%? 50%? 95%? I don't absolutely know. But I know as a child, I used to think well, Roman Catholics are saved. I'm not too sure about everybody else. And then as a seminarian and a theologian, I began to realize how broad this incarnation and salvation is in and through Jesus Christ. And I liked the idea in the early church. It was a heresy. In Latin, it was called Pauci Electi, that there were only a few saved. The church condemned this. Some religions, and we talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, 144,000 saved from each tribe. We read it in Feast of All Saints in our book of Revelation, 144,000 saved. And often I think we give the mentality that there's really only a few saved. I really do not know the answer to that, but the older I become, and the more I realize how wonderful God is, and God became one of us and saved us all, there is, I think, few. I don't know, but I think few. In closing, I'd like to read from one of these pages of this 2-volume book of Richard McBrien on page 1152. And this is what I think, what he thinks, but we don't absolutely know. He says, neither Jesus nor the church after him ever stated that persons actually go to hell or are there now. Jesus, as does the church, restricts himself to the possibility of not being saved. If someone really and deliberately rejected God, that is what he or she would be choosing instead of God, a totally isolated existence. Even in this sense, hell is not the product of divine vindictiveness. Rather, it is God yielding to our freedom. To reject God is to reject life in community. Conversely, it is to choose life in isolation. Hell is absolute isolation. The radical sinner chooses that. God does not impose it as a punishment. Have you ever heard, how can there be a God? I can't believe in a God who would send me to hell. I can't either. God doesn't. The only way we can get there is if we disqualify ourselves. Doesn't answer the question, but it certainly is, I think, a happy attitude that God came and saved all. The only way that we cannot be saved is if we disqualify ourselves. Sounds pretty good to me. Have a good day.